Hey everyone! Winning lane mostly comes down to game knowledge, especially in a winning matchup. But learning to push your champion to the limit and milk as much of a lead as you can, that's when it gets a little more difficult. Well, in this video, we're going to watch how KT Smeb does exactly that while playing Jace vs Fiora. Jace is a ranged and melee bruiser versus Fiora, who is also a melee bruiser. Jace has the range advantage, poke and burst trade advantage, while Fiora has the extended trade advantage. Fiora loses this matchup early on, but if Jace doesn't punish hard enough, Fiora will outscale him. So Jace's job is to get as big of a lead as he can in the first 5 levels. His game plan will be pretty standard for these kinds of matchups. Mission 1, slow push waves. To prevent Fiora from being able to all in and use her extended trade advantage, Jace wants to stack up big waves. Mission 2, harass when they go for CS. A staple mission of all melee vs range matchups, the more damage Jace can get onto Fiora, the more CS he can deny or the more pressure he can put on the tower. In Mission 3, prevent extended trades. The only win condition Fiora has is extended trades, so Jace just needs to avoid them entirely. Alright, let's get into the gameplay. As Smeb gets to lane, Fiora is standing still, probably watching the 4v4 fight, so Smeb gives her an auto attack to wake her up. Fiora trades back with her Q though, proccing a vital and healing her to even out the trade a bit. Then, as Fiora goes for last hit, Smeb uses his Q to poke her for Mission 2. Fiora goes all in here, and before watching it, take note of their health before it starts. Jace is at 90% with Fiora at 55%. Fiora desperately tries to hit the vital in the back of Smeb, but he positions perfectly, making sure she can't get it. Then he keeps autoing her while face checking the bush since he didn't have his ward from using it in level 1 in the river. Fiora doesn't back down though and procs a vital, then flashes to proc a second one fast, dropping Smeb to 11 health, and he flashes away. So the reason I said to take note of their health before it started was to show you what happens when you have an extended trade advantage like Fiora does. If you remember from last week's reviews, we went over this exact matchup of a Fiora that should have went in and killed Jace after he used his full combo and had no mana, but decided not to. So remember stuff like this when you're playing melee vs ranged. Anyways, this was actually really well played by Fiora and Smeb, and they trade flashes. But if we look at the wave now, since they both drew some crazy minion aggro the whole fight, it pulled towards Jace. This sets him up perfectly to start a slow push for Mission 1 because they have pretty much even minions since Fiora has a few that have really low health, so the even minion rule applies. If he just gets a small minion lead and starts last hitting, he can stack it up. Smeb is starting to sustain back up from his corrupting potion now, but it's not significant enough that he can go all in. But he goes into hammer form and uses Q on the minions, which damages Fiora and thins the way for Mission 1. Fiora trades back with her Q though, which brings us to a concept that we are constantly seeing in their reviews and generally all low elo games. Not being afraid to trade. If you have noticed, even when Fiora is really low, if Jace just used all of his cooldowns, she still trades with him and she never takes free damage. After that, when Smeb's ranged form comes back up, he goes for a shock blast to finish off the Fiora, but she blocks it with her W. This lane is actually insane right now, both players are playing really well. Fiora is way too low and doesn't have her W, and she knows Smeb is gonna stack a big wave, so she leaves Vision to teleport and heal up. Meanwhile, Smeb finishes collecting last hits. Even though he's really low, he knows Fiora doesn't have flash, so he's in no threat of dying unless she parries his E, and he has a big wave around him. So he keeps stacking up his wave, pokes Fiora a little bit with his shock blast, then decides it's too dangerous to stay any longer and recalls, then TPs back to lane. Something small that Smeb did here though, which you can implement into your own games, is when playing any champion with a poking tool like a Lowy or Jace, if you know you're going to recall soon, use the rest of your mana to get some poke before doing it, since you're going to replenish it before TPing back. This gives you a health lead when you teleport back to lane. Anyways, he gets back to lane and goes into this brush, then uses it to cheese Fiora with an empowered shock blast. You should always be doing this with any range ability you have. But, just like I was talking about, Fiora isn't scared to trade and gets a little bit of damage onto Smeb. If you're wondering why Smeb isn't trying to push into the tower right now, it's because Fiora thinned the wave as he was gone, so he didn't have Mission 1 done anymore, and he knows how hard Fiora wins extended trades with his tower so far away, which is Mission 3. So he continues to play cautious while slowly poking Fiora down. But then he predicts Fiora is going to use her Q, so he runs away from her to dodge it, then immediately switches to hammer form to use Q on the minion, which also hits Fiora, and then backs off for Mission 3. This was a great example of how pro players abuse every time your main ability is on cooldown. Fiora didn't have Q, so Smeb didn't hesitate to get some free damage there. Then, a vital appears on the bottom side of Smeb, so watch his positioning. He puts his body right next to the wall to make it near impossible for Fiora to get it with her Q. The vital switches sides now to the top of him, and watch his positioning change again. When he stands over here, it's really hard for Fiora to get behind him. Smeb goes for some Shock Blast poke here, then uses his Jace Gate to speed him up and bait out Fiora's Q. And since her main ability is down again, he uses his range form W to hit her a few times to get some really nice poke. Up until this point, the lane has been very even, but with that last trade and how the minions are starting to stack up again for mission 1, Smeb is in a really dominant position. Fiora tries to trade again, but takes even more damage, putting her in an even worse spot. Alright, so Fiora is really low and starts walking up towards this brush. Why do you think she's doing this? Your immediate thought should be, he's getting ganked. Fiora is in no position to fight. Smeb has a huge health lead and has a minion lead. Reading enemy movement can easily alert you of when the jungler is around or is about to gank. Well, Smeb smells that something is up and goes in knowing Xin has to be here. Fiora jumps in with her Q and expects Jace to Shock Blast, but Smeb doesn't panic and waits for it, then hits a Shock Blast, switches to Hammer Form and finishes Fiora off. Then he uses his Phase Rush and Gate Speed to cut away from Xin and knocks him away. This forces Xin to flash, but gave Smeb enough time for his Cannon Form to come back up, so he switches to that for that extra bit of movement speed to keep kiting Xin and finish him off for the double kill. So obviously Smeb is insane and played that literally perfect. And of course it takes a long time to get to this level of mechanics, but you have to realize this is Korean Challenger, and you can do the same exact thing he just did in your own games if you set it up properly by sticking to your win conditions and getting a nice health lead like he did while stacking a big wave to assist you in the 2v1. But Smeb got the lead he was looking for in the early game and really pushed Jace's limits with this 2v1 to close out the lane. Let's recap. At the start of the lane, Fiora decided to all in at level 1 after a few minions died and forced Smeb to flash away with 10 health, which really showed us all that if your champion wins in extended trades, you can win a fight where you start at 55% like Fiora and the enemy starts at 90% like Smeb. After that, Smeb healed up with his corrupting potion, forcing Fiora to recall and TP back to lane. When she got back to lane, Smeb used the rest of his mana to poke her down to give him a health lead after he uses his own TP. When he got back, the wave was close to Fiora's tower, but since he didn't have a wave of minions to help him fight, he didn't try to keep pushing. He slowly poked Fiora down every time she used her Q and avoided any chance to give her an extended trade. Eventually Fiora got really low, but started walking up, which alerted Smeb that Xin should be here to gank. He went all in on Fiora, killed her first, and killed the Xin as well through some perfect kiting to get a double kill and close out the lane. That's gonna wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed and thanks for watching.